you're making the headway here, dopamine is released, you feel all good, you guys are all good and everything. And then suddenly the abuser becomes cruel in that relationship. But you always, most times, will stand your position of being nice. You're still working hard to love them. You're constantly working hard to love them. But there's a cycle where they constantly are nice. Dopamine is released. They're being cruel. That's not released anymore. And then again, they become nice again. And then the cycle continues where it's like one moment they're nice, the next moment they're not. And you're on this, I like to think of it as the roller coaster journey. Hi, and welcome back to the channel with your host, Susan. I'm going to be continuing the series on trauma bonds, identifying trauma bonds, understanding trauma bonds, healing and breaking free from this toxic cycle so that we can rebuild our lives and live the life that God has planned for us. Now, if you're following this channel for the first time, you're very welcome. Do me a favor, like and subscribe to this video so that everyone else that needs the help that you need, as well as I did at a point, can find this video and utilize the materials, very, very in-depth research materials that's been done. As you know, if you're new to this video, my series are very, very intense. So sometimes I always recommend to my subscribers to get a notepad and a pen ready because I'm going to give you some very important details in this particular one today. Now, today's video is about healing from trauma bonds. Last series, we identified what trauma bonds were and we went down, literally deep dove into what the difference is between Stockholm syndrome, trauma bonds. We also identified how trauma bonds form from childhood, perhaps, or abusive relationships from the past. And I also gave you some 5 cyclical ways that trauma bonds are literally cemented in toxic relationships. Once we've identified those, I want to talk you through 7 ways to heal from trauma bonds and also identifying the signs and symptoms in your life, in your relationship, or in the relationship of the loved ones around you. Trauma bonds often disguise themselves as deep emotional connections, which will make it difficult to see the damage they cause behind closed doors or behind the scenes. However, through biblical discernment and self-awareness, we can uncover the truth behind how trauma bonds form, and we can also heal and start to walk in the life that God has for us. According to John 8:32, Jesus said, "You shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free." And also Proverbs 4:7, wisdom is the principal thing. So therefore get wisdom, and with all you're getting, get understanding. We can't effectively break trauma bonds if we don't know how to apply the wisdom of what we know about the revelation of the truth of what we have to then break free from it. The first part to healing from trauma bonds is knowing the truth about it. And once we know the truth, we need to arm ourselves with the wisdom of how these things have formed and getting the understanding to not walk into certain traumatic relationships that we have walked out from. So knowledge is key, and let's understand the signs and symptoms in this video. I'm going to talk on the 7 signs and symptoms that would show you that you are probably in a trauma bonded relationship. The first sign is that you feel stuck. You feel stuck in that relationship. One of the most common signs of a trauma bond is the feeling of being unable to leave a relationship even when that relationship is harmful. You may recognize the emotional pain, but yet you find yourself constantly drawn back to the person who causes that pain. This is because the cycle of abuse creates a deep emotional dependency, which is often reinforced by intermittent reinforcement. Now, I spoke about intermittent reinforcement in a lot more detail in the first part of this series, which you can find right here. And in that video, I gave you a really deep dive into the work that was done in research by Dr. Harry on some research that he'd done on some monkeys and how that forms this intermittent reinforcement. You can catch that video right there. But in this particular one, I want to just touch on why it's so important to know that if you're feeling stuck in a relationship, in a toxic relationship, it's probably a sign that you need to reassess the realities of your relationship and how healthy that relationship is, or potentially how unhealthy it has become. Jesus reminds us in John 8:32, then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Recognizing the truth about an unhealthy relationship is the first step towards freedom. The second step is, if that toxic relationship is feeling like the abuser justifies or minimizes the abuse, do you feel like whenever you bring your concerns to the abuser, the abuser will constantly justify why they were abusive? Oh, it's because you made me do this, or they minimize the abuse. So if that person did something to you that made you feel pain, and you try to communicate this pain to this individual, but they minimize it, saying things like, "Oh, you can't even take a joke. I was only joking. Why can't you take a joke?" And what they did was they probably sped really fast when you were both in the car because you were probably in an argument or disagreement where you were putting your foot down. But because they didn't like that you were standing up to them, they wanted to punish you. And so when they did that and it scared you asked them not to speak like that anymore or not to do that anymore, they actually would ramp up the abuse, and they would even speed faster the next time. And if you call them out on their behavior, they say things like, "Oh, I was only joking with you. Why can't you even take a joke anymore? You wear your heart on your sleeve. You're so emotional," and that is just not right. People in trauma bonds, they often make excuses a lot of the times for their abuser's bad behaviors, or they downplay the pain that they are experiencing. They may also believe that the abuser is not that bad, and they feel like if they work harder enough to love this person more, then they might win this individual over. From a biblical perspective, in Ephesians 5:11, the Bible tells us to have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them. Denial will keep us in bondage, but the truth brings clarity and healing. Number 3, there's cycles of high and low. How many of us have found ourselves in a position where you are not in a healthy relationship, and you know this because one moment in your relationship everything seems really good, it's good going, and the next moment it's low? Well, like I said in the previous video, the intermittent reinforcement, which you can find here, is a very classical example of the way that this causes us to get cemented in these relationships. So imagine you're on a roller coaster in the UK we have Thorpe Park, and it goes up and down and up and down. And that's a cycle of normally like a roller coaster. You can't really predict when it's going to go up and it's going to come down. But if you're knowledgeable, if you're armed with knowledge and armed with truth, you can probably look at it from an aerial perspective and you can see, oh, this relationship or this situation is going to deteriorate and we're going to have seasons of low, so I'm going to step away. But if you're in the thick of it, most times you can't see it. So this is what happens in these kinds of relationships. Trauma bonds create a roller coaster of emotions where there are periods of extreme affection. So we have the periods of extreme affection where things seemingly goes really nice, and then there are periods where things are really bad and things are cruel. Again, it goes up again at periods of extreme emotions, and then it goes down again. And it's just a roller coaster of highs and lows. Remember in the second point where we spoke about the justification or the minimization of the abuse by the abuser, the more you think you can love this individual, the worse it becomes. Why? Because in the cycles of highs and lows, I'm just looking for my pen, if you constantly feel like you can victim loves, you're constantly loving, right, and the abuser is cruel. No, abuser is nice. So in the periods of the highs, the abuser is nice and you feel like you can love. The dopamine is released. So dopamine is a feel-good hormone. If you go to the gym or you do something, you engage in activities that you enjoy, dopamine is meant to be colored red, but I don't know why my red isn't showing. So this is the dopamine that's released and it makes you feel good. So you feel like, things are going to be fine. He's been really nice, or she's been really nice, and I'm loving, and we're going to connect in this way. The moment the abuser becomes cruel, and a lot of the times the abuser becomes cruel because you don't even recognize that you don't have a part to play in whether they're feeling bad or good. A lot of the times their cruelty can come from maybe them having an experience outside of your home environment that's not related to you, but they take it out on you. Or they're triggered by a sense of shame, feeling bad about something that you probably even caused them to feel that sense of shame. So they become cruel. And so that period of low comes in. But because you feel like you can love this person into completely loving you, you still continue to love. You continue to love. But in this case, there's no dopamine that's released. So rather than dopamine, there's confusion, right? So you're constantly confused because you thought, but we were good at this point. So what's going on here? Again, the abuser in the bit that they feel like they're going to lose you, they become nice again. So they become super, super nice, right? Dopamine is released. You're thinking, my love is working for this individual, so I'm going to stay in this relationship. But then again, it happens again where there's another low. Trauma bonds that create a roller coaster of emotions, and there are periods of extreme affection, kindness, and then followed by periods of cruelty, emotional withdrawal, manipulation, gaslighting, control, abuse. This unpredictability will strengthen the bond as the victim clings only to the good times. And some people call this breadcrumbing, right? Where there's intermittent reinforcement based on a false hope of things getting better. So every time they feel like they're losing you, then they give you excessive affection and excessive admiration and excessive attention. But the moment they feel like they've gotten your attention, then it's back to the neglect, abuse, manipulation, control, withdrawal. From James 1:8, it warns us that a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. Healthy relationships will bring stability to you and not confusion. Let's go to number 4. A sign and symptom of you being in a trauma-bonded relationship is feeling the fear of abandonment or loneliness. Have you ever been in a position where you feel like you're in a relationship, a committed relationship, but it feels as though it's only you that's present in that relationship? Well, a person in a trauma bond may fear being alone, so much so that they tolerate mistreatment. This fear can stem from past experiences of rejection, neglect, or low self-esteem. So a lot of times people in trauma bonded relationships stay in a toxic relationship because they feel like they can't get any better or they can't do any better. And it's probably stemming from past experience of feeling not good enough, or feeling like you couldn't have done better, or having low self-worth in yourself. Deuteronomy 31:6 reminds us to be strong and to be courageous, to not be afraid or terrified because of them. For the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. God's love is constant and secure, unlike the instability of being in a trauma bond. Now, if you've been following this video so far and you're getting so much benefit out of it, why don't you do me a favor and like this video, share and subscribe with your network, and make sure that you turn on the notification bell so that when the next series comes up, you're going to be the first to be notified. Also, if you're interested in joining a community of believers that are working to reveal the heart of God for relationship, walking out of abusive and toxic relationships, and to walk in the truth of God's call upon our lives to live a life full of joy and peace, then you can scan this QR code right here, and together we can work together to heal and to live the best life God has for us. Let's move on to sign number 5, that you're probably in a traumatic or trauma-bonded toxic relationship. It is having a loss of personal identity. This one is heavy because there's so many people that I've spoken to, and the thing about being in a committed long-term relationship is that things should actually get better and not worse. The moment you feel like you're in a relationship that feels like you're not getting better, is like the worst part of yourself is always constantly being exposed, then you need to really you need to question, what is it that I am tolerating in this relationship that's making me get worse? Why do I feel like I'm not getting to the better version of myself? Now, hear me out. It's not every relationship that makes you feel bad about yourself all the time that is actually toxic. Sometimes, when we find that we are feeling bad in a relationship, it's probably a call or a tug on our heart to do a bit more self-reflection on why we feel this way. Perhaps you have a flaw in your character that needs to be worked on. But the difference between being in a traumatic relationship that's constantly making you feel worse over time is the consistency in the behavior. If you're in a relationship that makes you feel like you're getting worse over time, you're having a loss of your sense of self, your sense of personal identity, it begs to think, what is it about this relationship that is not good for me? Over time, trauma bonds erode a person's self-esteem and identity. The individual may shape their thoughts, decisions, and actions around pleasing their abuser, losing sight of their own needs and desires. If you feel like you're always dropping everything around you to please another individual, I want you to check out this video on the People Pleasing series. I've done a 5-part series there to help you identify why you might be in this position of always losing your own self to please another person, even at your own detriment. There's been a lot of psychological research that's gone into this. There's also been a lot of perspective from a biblical account on why this is the case. And at the end of that series, I give you some very important tools and tips that you can start practicing today to come out of that people pleasing habit. Because the moment you realize that you're a people pleaser is the first point in your healing journey. And loss of personal identity could also be a result of you always constantly neglecting yourself to suit the needs of other people, even though it does not benefit you. Psalm 139 verse 14 reminds us, I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. God created us with purpose and worth, and another person would not and should not ever be put in a position where they define our sense of worth and identity, because our identity comes from Jesus Christ himself. We are not meant to be defined by someone else's maltreatment of us. And the moment you realize your worth and your sense of worth in Jesus Christ and in the word of God concerning who you are, then you take your identity back. Number 6, there are going to be emotional and physical symptoms. When you're in a trauma-bonded relationship, you find out that you actually realize there are things in your body that are trying to tell you. And some people relate this to the gut feeling. When we have emotional and physical symptoms, trauma bonds can manifest physically and emotionally, leading to stress, anxiety, depression, and even physical ailments like excessive tiredness, headaches, digestive issues, even you losing your ability to sleep well at night. From a biblical perspective, we see in Proverbs 17 verse 22 that a cheerful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit, it dries up the bones. God desires for us to walk in peace and wholeness and not in constant distress. So if you find that you're constantly in pain in your body, you're having a long-term type of illness, maybe like a migraine, a headache, a cold, a flu that you can't seem to shake off, you're having issues in your mind, there's constant fog in your mind, you're under constant stress and fatigue, then you might need to reassess if you're really, really in a healthy bonded relationship. And the last one is doubting your own discernment. Your ability to have discernment, and some people call this trusting the guts, right? It's that little inner voice, that little inner witness in you that often tells you I don't think this is right. Or that screams, danger, danger. The moment that voice has been quieted, and a lot of the times the quieting of the inner discernment is a result of the intermittent cycle in these trauma bonded relationships. Because when you're in a trauma bonded relationship and there are intermittent cycles of highs and lows and highs and lows, it introduces confusion. When confusion has been introduced in that relationship, you would tend to trust your abuser the more and distrust your own reality. Even worse still is when you're trusting the abuser that's causing you a lot of harm, you distrust your own reality and you're playing into the hand of the abuser when they constantly manipulate you and gaslight you and they try to control you. When confusion has been introduced, you are not also able to trust your own sense of judgment because now, because of fear and guilt, and because you feel like you just have to submit to this individual to keep the peace so that you're not walking around on eggshells, you submit your own wills, your wants, your emotions to another person, and this person will use those things to maltreat you. So over time, you lose a sense of trusting your own discernment, trusting your own inner witness, trusting your own ability to logically think for yourself. And in essence, you lose your own executive functioning and you give that control to someone else that unfortunately using it to abuse you. If you doubt your own discernment as a result of gaslighting, one thing that I would always encourage people to do is to start off by keeping a journal. Now, the way you do this is to go about it very carefully, because if the abuser realizes that you're in a position where you're getting strengthened, they would want to discourage that. So it's very likely that they would not even want you to watch this video. It's very likely that they don't even want you to do the research or the reading because they want you to continue to stay in this fragmented state of mind where you're trusting their own illusions and delusional way of life, like the lies, and they don't want you to reconnect back to friends, family, loved ones. They don't want you to get the self-help that you need to actually be able to move on with your life. One thing that I would recommend to start to do potentially is, if possible, take a break away from the relationship. Make sure that it's planned out and make sure that you surround yourself with your friends, families, trusted individuals and loved ones so that you are not walking this journey alone. I want you to also start doing something and do it in a way that the abuser cannot find it. Is to journal. Journal your thoughts, journal your ideas, journal your experiences on a day-to-day basis. By doing this, you're reconnecting back the part of your brain that has been disconnected from the trauma of being in this relationship, and you're giving your brain a chance to heal. You're reconnecting your medial prefrontal cortex, which is your logical part of the brain, with the emotional part of the brain that has only been online for so long. When you journal, you give your brain a chance to reconnect areas and they call it neural pathways that has been isolated for so long. When you also journal, you give yourself a chance to logically and effectively reassess the state of the relationship from an aerial viewpoint. And you notice that one of the things that you start to benefit from is retention, longer memory, ability to focus, and also you're arming yourself with tools and technique to avoid getting into arguments with this toxic individual. Because one thing they'd like to do is draw you into arguments so that when you start to retaliate, then they start to blame you, and they start to say things or turn it around on you, saying that you actually are the problem. When you journal, you give yourself a chance at loving yourself again. And you don't have to get a book or a notepad or a laptop. You can do it on a device that can be securely locked away so that this individual does not have access to it by password protecting it. That is you giving yourself a space and a chance to start to heal from all the pain and to start to unravel all the hurtful things that were said to you and all the hurtful things that have been done to you. If you've been enjoying this video so far, why don't you give it a thumbs up, subscribe to this channel, by doing that, and also turn on the notification bell so that other people in this category that need the help that you are getting can also connect with this video. I want to see down in the comments below also 1 or 2 areas that you are recognizing that have been discussed that you might be in a traumatically bonded relationship. God calls us to live in love and in freedom, and not in deception and bondage. Because Satan is the father of all lies, because he has been a liar from the beginning. So if you find yourself in a cyclical relationship that is based off of lies, deception, manipulation, and control, that surely can't be from God. And the first step to healing is recognizing that you are actually, in fact, in a traumatic bonded relationship. I want you to use all these 7 steps that we have discussed. So, do you feel stuck in that relationship? Do you feel like your emotions and your needs and wants are constantly being minimized? And do you feel that the abuse is always constantly being justified? Are there cycles of highs and lows in the relationship where you feel like you just can't have a stable, but there's no stable balance, or there's no stability in that relationship? Do you have a fear of being abandoned and feeling lonely, perhaps due to a traumatic past experience, or having this low self-worth or low self-esteem that's been developed from a childhood or past relationship? Do you have a loss of personal identity where you have completely submitted your entirety to another person that's unfortunately now using this to control you, manipulate you, using your weaknesses and your vulnerabilities against you? Do you feel emotional and physical symptoms, so emotional symptoms in your mind? Let's hold on to the promises of Isaiah 61 verse 1. The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is on me, because the Lord has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives, and to release from darkness for the prisoners. I pray that we will walk in the freedom and the truth of the Word of God. And I want you to meditate on John chapter 8 verse 32. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And I also want you to meditate on Psalm 139 verse 14. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. God does not create a mistake. Remember in the creation story, and every single day God created something. He assessed it. He said it was good, and then he moved on to the next creation. You were specifically designed for a purpose here on earth. And no human being has any right to take your authority, to take your executive functioning away from you. You are not a pawn to be used by anyone else for their own selfish ends. So take back your life, and I pray that the Holy Spirit will help you in this season. Next series, I want to talk about how to break away from this toxic trauma bonded cycle and gain yourself back. I'll see you in the next video, guys. Thanks for watching.